It looks like we have a good amount of people here. I would just like to introduce myself. My name is Kenny Anderson, and I'm the coordinator of employer recruitment and student engagement here at Point Park University in the Professional Career Readiness Center. I will be serving as your host and moderator for today's event. And as a reminder, I just want to let everyone know that this event will be recorded. So a little bit about me and my background and in my role. As an employer recruitment and student engagement coordinator, I am primarily responsible for creating innovative and appealing events to engage students and employers together and with Point Park. I'm also a major component in keeping stakeholders connected to university and with the Professional Career Readiness Center. I found a passion for working in career development after completing a year-long internship in the Career and Professional Development Center at California University of Pennsylvania through my Master's of Counseling Psychology program at Chatham University. I believe that a great work ethic starts with a strong mind, body, and soul through self-exploration. Also, I bring a very prideful background that I hope creates positivity through everyone that I come into contact with. In conjunction with the Literary Arts and Social Justice Department here at Point Park, the Professional Career Readiness Center would like to formally welcome you to the Literary Arts and Social Justice Career and Internship Summit. Point Park University Literary Arts and Social Justice programs invite students to immerse themselves in creativity, language, and understanding injustice. Graduates establish their own magazines, write content for national websites, work for nonprofits, publish poems in literary journals, and cover their local arts and entertainment scenes as freelance writers. Students and alumni have been invited to this professional development event to learn how English, creative writing, and social justice programs prepare them for competitive career opportunities. Today, you will hear from a variety of industry professionals, all of which have graduated or are about to graduate from Point Park. As you explore career opportunities and reflect upon the value of a literary arts and social justice related degree. We'll begin by hearing from Jamie Johnson, Point Park alum, and an employee at Highmark Health, where her current role is Readiness and Change Specialist. She'll be delivering our keynote presentation for this event. We will then transition into the Literary Arts and Social Justice Career Panel, where all of our panelists are either current Point Park students or have graduated from Point Park. Our panel includes Lauren Hunter, current Point Park student in her senior year, majoring in creative writing, Kaitlyn Regulbuto, Point Park alum, special education teacher for grades 9 through 12 at the Covenant House, and Nicole Chynoweth, Point Park alum as well, content manager in the Enrollment Marketing Department here at Point Park. We will then transition to closing remarks delivered by Dawnese Booker, program manager of experiential learning at the Point Park University Professional Career Readiness Center. Dawnese, excuse me, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Dawnese will highlight the importance of maximizing your time here at Point Park and utilizing Career Center resources before and after graduation for career success. The Professional Career Readiness Center is proud to support this program in the development of literary arts and social justice students and alumni. The Professional Career Readiness Center provides programs and services to enhance student and alumni success by creating opportunities to achieve career readiness, increase knowledge of career pathways, and connect to experiential learning such as internships and co-ops. The center also assists students in developing professional skills and connecting to meaningful employment through strategic partnerships and targeted events. So just a few housekeeping tips before we get started. Speakers and panelists, if you could please keep your microphones muted until it is your time to present. And attendees, everyone is automatically muted and has their cameras turned off for them. So please, if you have a question, utilize the Q&A function throughout the event. We will periodically answer questions throughout. If you have a question for the keynote speaker during the panel portion, feel free to use that Q&A function. So now I would like to transition to our keynote speaker portion of the event. And I would like to introduce you to Jamie Johnson, who is a Pittsburgh native, a Point Park alum, and an employee at Highmark Health, where her current role is a Readiness and Change Specialist. She holds a bachelor's degree in secondary English education from Point Park and a master's degree in psychology from Capella, as well as emotional intelligence and human-centered design certificates from various organizations. Her presentation today is titled, "Do I Dare Disturb the Universe? Creating a Career with Poetry and the Arts," where she will discuss how her love of poetry, writing, and the arts in general helped her to build a winding but exciting career path. Many of us often wonder, is that job right for me? Or do I have what it takes to even get an interview? Maybe we ask ourselves, should I really be authentic and share my thoughts? Will my authenticity hurt my chance for a job? Today, Jamie will discuss how to translate those nagging questions into taking a chance moments. She will discuss the importance of being yourself, being a disruptor, and never losing sight of your passions, regardless of what is thrown at you. Right now, you may be asking, do I dare disturb the universe? By the end of today's session, you will hopefully have your answer. With that being said, everyone, please welcome Jamie Johnson. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much. So I'm going to share my screen here. All right. Is everyone able to see my screen and to hear me, right? Those two questions we have all asked each other constantly for 2 years now. Are we all set with sound and video? Perfect. Thank you so much, Dawnese. So yes, first I really want to thank Kenny and Sarah for inviting me here today. I saw Sarah hop on the call as well. And Kenny, thank you so much for the introduction. As a Point Park alum who studied English and creative writing, it is an absolute joy to be back and talking with everyone today. So thank you for this. Now, before we dive into the presentation, I do want to share a little bit more about myself, which I think will help to provide some context as I share each part of my story. So, as Kenny said, I graduated from Point Park in 2010 with a BA in secondary English education, and I later attained my Master of Science in Psychology from Capella in 2019. So, a couple fun facts. My husband is also a Point Park alum, and several of my very dear friends are also Point Park alum. My cousin even graduated from Point Park way back when it was Point Park College, so before it became a university. So, lots of Point Park connections still float around my life, and it's awesome. So, for me, from college to current day, I've worn many career hats. I've been a waitress, a bartender, a substitute teacher, a data entry specialist, a senior training specialist, an instructional designer, and I'm now a readiness and change specialist. Now, some of those titles sound super cool and fun, others, maybe not so much, but they all played a key role in my career journey. So, what these titles don't always showcase are the artistic, the creative, and the truly human sides of what my corporate jobs actually are. But today, I will show you just how artistic, creative, and human they can be. At the end of the day, I am an arts and writing junkie, and I love to learn how our brains work, how we create behaviors, and how we change existing behaviors. So, as we get into the meat of today's talk, all of these career details will creep in, so stay tuned for more on all of those. Now, many of you may be asking, what is up with this title, right? Do I disturb the universe? Well, some of you may be familiar with this. This is one of my favorite lines from my favorite poem called The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock by T.S. Eliot. So I want everyone to keep this question in mind throughout the session. I'm sure some of you could already be wondering, well, how does a line from a poem tie into a career summit event? Well, for me, poetry ties into literally everything. I built a career with poetry, the arts, and creativity as my foundations. And I'm going to share with you today how you can also disturb the universe a little bit as you begin your careers. I had to dare to disturb that universe many times along the way because the career path was just not always clear. It still isn't clear at times. But I've learned that all of that uncertainty is okay. It's normal and it happens to just about everybody at some point, if not at several points. So, one of the hardest transitions in life was going from a student into a career. I know for me, it was very uncertain. It felt super uncomfortable. And that's really challenging when you're in a major transition, right? Those yucky feelings. It's a challenging side of all major transitions, but it was especially yucky at that age and as I was getting out of college. If you're starting to feel any of that discomfort and uncertainty, or if you felt it before, just know that you're not alone. I think people forget to remind us as we grow up that you can feel these things at all ages. right? Even when it appears that you have all the answers, people still feel these things all throughout their career, those uncomfortable feelings and those uncertainties. So as we go through today, we will keep returning to this poetry line. And hopefully by the end of the event, you'll feel a little more ready to disturb the universe too. So as Kenny said, feel free to utilize that chat feature if you would like to ask a question. And as I'm talking through, you can always jot down questions as well. And if we have a few minutes before the panel, I can also take some questions then. All right, so let's dig in. So when I left Point Park, I was armed with that Bachelor of Arts in secondary English education, which meant to most people that I was going to be an English teacher. Well, I'm really glad that everybody else was so certain about my career because I sure wasn't. While I was completing my student teaching semester, I found things that I loved about being in that high school. I loved when students had that light bulb moment and something clicked and they understood a concept from class. It was a joy to watch them because they were literally gathering knowledge in front of me, and that was so cool. I also liked how I actually felt like I was helping people on a regular basis. Students would come in and they had bad days just like everyone else. And if there was something I could do during class to help ease that just a little bit, it made my days extra wonderful too. So that was a really great part. Of course, I knew at my core that English literature and writing were still the topics that I loved. And I loved talking about them and discussing them with students and teaching them about these things. But even with all of these positives, was teaching really what I wanted to do? So I worked as a substitute teacher for about 2 years in the same high school where I completed my student teaching. And I honestly knew within the first year that it wasn't right for me. It had nothing to do with the school district. It wasn't because of the school district, but I just knew that teaching in general wasn't the job for me. And now what? Right? Now what could I do? Now what was I going to shift into if I wasn't an English teacher? So I actually did what I said I would never do. And I made the jump to job searching in the corporate world. I remember all throughout high school and college, I said I would never work for a corporation. I never wanted to be the person who sat behind a desk, literally as I'm doing right now, sitting behind a desk. I never wanted to be that because it seemed dull to me. And I didn't want dull. Now, little did I know, and I eventually found this out over several years and many years later, but little did I know that there were people and aspects to the corporate world that were brighter than I ever imagined they could be. So, anyway, I applied for everything in that corporate world, from administrative roles to communication and marketing specialists to manager jobs, and literally anything in between that you could think of, I probably applied for. When I was looking at all of those jobs, I applied to everything for a couple of reasons. So, first, I applied because on the practical side, I needed a job, right? It had to happen. I knew that I needed something to become sustainable. But I also applied to everything because I was genuinely looking for jobs that I wanted. So, what I did was for every one practical job, I tried to apply to at least 2 or 3 that I could just be passionate about, that I knew that I wanted. So, this brings me to Disturbing the Universe Part 1, and that is to take a chance and apply for those jobs you want. There were many times back then, and even still now, when my descriptions on my resume didn't exactly match the descriptions for the job. And you know what? I apply anyway. I did then, and I still do, because you never know who is on the other side of that resume. So while experiences are great, one of the things I've learned in the corporate world is that the world overall today is filled with the need for fresh minds. Sometimes the folks that have been in the same role for many, many years are completely stuck in their ways. So looking into the future for them is a little bit different than it is for someone who's brand new looking into the future. So essentially, some of the folks that have been in their roles for a long time just prefer to do things really as they've always been done. But if companies want to survive today and thrive for tomorrow, they need new ideas and new ways of working. I've learned in a couple of different corporate situations that nothing is the kiss of death more than, quote, doing work as it's always been done. So yes, submit your resume, even if you aren't sure that you meet those experience requirements. Apply for those roles that you know will add passion to your life. So it's also important to remember that as you're going through those jobs and looking at those requirements, you can showcase skills that are transferable on your resume. So let's dig a little bit more into that idea. So transferable skills are exactly what they sound like. They're skills that transfer from one job to another, regardless of what the position is. So you may be wondering, how does someone searching for a first big job have transferable skills, right? They almost sound like something that would come after you've gotten a job versus before. That's not true. The good news is transferable skills can literally come from anywhere. So let's look at a few examples. So for anyone who's worked in retail or food service, if you've held this type of job, like a wait staff person, a bartender, barista, someone who maybe worked at a department store or a bookstore or anything like that, you can add skills to your resume that are these type of skills: customer service, organization, and ability to remain calm in high energy environments. So I myself spent years as a waitress and a bartender. Nothing prepared me more for talking to my current corporate clients than working in those industry roles. I was literally thrown in front of new people constantly, usually in a busy environment, and I had to always have that positive tone, that smile throughout all of it. These roles also taught me that thinking on my feet, organizing my tasks in order to handle whatever the customer needed, and those type of skills were really essential. Working with the public, I've also learned, helped to create a wonderful amount of empathy in me, because I suddenly understood how hard customer service type roles were for the folks in them. So this can include even things like call center jobs. If you've ever known anyone who worked in a call center customer service role, they can be some of the most challenging. Those days can be difficult when you're on the phone like that, and they can be equally as challenging for someone who may be a waitress or working in a retail role. So if you've worked in service and you can understand just how difficult some of these days are, it really helps to build that empathy muscle. You know that you feel for those folks and that you understand how burnout and frustrated they can be and how hard it really can be to work with clients. Empathy is another skill that this world desperately needs, both for business and in real life. So corporations like to know that you have it. It really is another transferable skill. And we'll talk more about empathy in a little bit. So, how about transferable skills for creative writing and English? As I was completing my undergrad degree, I too sometimes wondered, what on earth am I going to do with an English degree? Because people really love to ask us that question, don't they? They ask it so often, it gets stuck in your head and it becomes hard to get it out of your head. I know for me, I thought about it pretty often. It's hard to ignore as you get closer and closer to graduation. And I'm pretty sure if I had $1 for every time someone asked me that question, I probably could have retired before my career ever actually started. But I found that my English degree, my ability to create something from nothing, and my ability to see the world in words, plus my ability to tell stories, all created my career. When I was hired at Highmark back in 2013, my first role at the company was called a senior training specialist. It was basically an administrative type role, but it also led me to special project work where I edited training materials and I began to do some minor design work for training courses. That special project work eventually led me to an instructional designer role, which is the person who writes and builds both single training courses and full training curricula and programs. Honestly, without my ability to creatively write and edit, I would never have been a designer. And it's so funny to even hear myself say that because I just had a conversation with one of my coworkers about that just 2 weeks ago. But it's very true. Without my background in English and writing, I wouldn't have become that designer. Overall, my ability to create those narratives, to create engaging content, to be able to turn really boring process details into creative, engaging content. And to do all of that in a clear, simple language that was able to really sink in with learners, all of that is what kickstarted my career. I also used analysis skills every day as a designer as I built these workshops and training courses and whatnot. And really, those analysis skills started when I was in creative writing and poetry workshops. When I was in those workshops in my course of Point Park Studies, I was digging into poems or short stories that other people had written. And I was asking questions and analyzing what was on the page. And those workshops really helped me to build a strong eye for detail. So when I started my role on that training team at Highmark in 2013, there was this current need at the time to print gigantic training manuals. And let me tell you, it was stressful. So I thought, how can I creatively think about this problem to maybe change it up a little bit? And this is where those analysis skills really came in for me. So we went in and we said, is it really appropriate in 2013 to still be printing these manuals? These manuals were literally hundreds of pages. So when you had a large class, you were printing thousands of pages for that class. We also figured out that not only were you printing thousands of pages, but you were losing thousands of dollars every calendar year because we had so many training courses. And I finally said, how can we get this done, right? How can we get this to just be a new thing? And I said, let's utilize SharePoint sites for electronic manuals. Suddenly, we eliminated print cost. We didn't have wasted hours. We didn't even have to buy things like binders because that was part of our supply orders all the time for these manuals. So while it may not seem that analysis and critical thinking skills that you build in a writing workshop are applicable to something else, they can be. The more you can hone your analysis skills, the more you can think about how to creatively solve a problem and come up with something fresh, the better off you'll be. Because at the end of the day, my analysis skills really did play a huge role in my career, and they still do now. So again, things like clear, concise writer, editor, innovator, good thinking skills and storytelling and analysis skills, all of these things that come from that English and creative writing setting are completely applicable in the real world setting as well. So what about some social justice studies degrees? How can those really play into transferable skills? So, as a social justice studies major, you've spent years building that empathy muscle that I talked about a few moments ago. You've gained a broad understanding of the injustices people face, and you've really seen the destruction that comes from those injustices. So, not only do you have a better understanding of people overall, but you have the ability to take that knowledge and understanding and be a change agent to start making people's lives better. How cool is that, right? So organizations, especially in today's climate, are really hungry for diversity, inclusion, equity, all of those type of programs, and just overall more positive cultures in their workplace. So they want to create things that are psychologically safe for all of their people. So people can be in a safe environment where they're free to be authentic, no matter what their gender, sexual orientation, race, religion, culture, any of these things. They want people to be in that very psychologically safe environment. So your knowledge around social injustices can help organizations to build their human resource programs around these topics. You can help companies to better understand people, to better understand their different cultures and skills, and to really help them understand how all of those people, when brought together, can bring so much to a workplace. So understanding people, being human, as I always say at work, is one of the strongest skills anyone can bring to an organization because people run organizations. Not data, not numbers, not business jargon, people. Corporations really like to say that business is important and business results are important. Honestly, I say that business results mean nothing without the humans behind them, and you all have that ability. So, along with some of those transferable skills, you're getting into that moment where you're starting to apply for those jobs. Fun times. So overall for me, having the courage to just apply to the roles I wanted, even when I really was questioning my skills and background and if they fit the job requirements, was truly the first step to finding my career path. When I initially got hired into the corporate world, I was not in a role that screamed, "This is so me." Not at all. Instead, it was a data entry position. And let me tell you, that data entry position barely made a whisper, let alone screamed anything. However, it allowed me two things that were vital at the time. One, it gave me that steady paycheck without having to work weekends or nights anymore. And two, it gave me experience within a corporation. When I was a substitute teacher, I was only paid for the days I worked. I had no paid time off, no insurance, and no guarantee of anything long term. The same went for my waitressing jobs. They were unsteady and the changing shifts really started to wear on me. I just didn't want that life anymore. So taking that first data entry job helped me to really get rid of those frustrating aspects of substitute teaching and waitress roles at the time. I knew that by taking that data entry role, I had just stepped the first of many steps in my career path. Now, while those entry level roles may not fulfill every need or passion you have, they will allow you to expand future options. So, not long after entering that first company, it was actually less than a year, I applied at Highmark, which is again my current employer, for that senior training specialist role. I never thought much about corporate training when I was in college. To be honest, I really didn't know it existed until my dad told me more about it one day many years ago. He shared with me that training, while not what I went to school for, could still include a lot of the things I loved, like working with people and teaching others, creating content, etc. So while the first step jobs are often necessary, as my data entry role was, being authentic to yourself and what you love is vital for your long term career path. So this brings me to Disturbing the Universe Part 2. Be authentic. Find a way to bring your true self to work every day and keep your eye out for the roles that will use your passions, even if you have to take that entry level step, that very first step before you get to a role that you're truly passionate about. I have learned that when you love what you do, you produce better work overall. Organizations essentially need us to work to our fullest potential. So it's also important for their overall business if the employees are happy and doing what they enjoy. So for me, there are two ways that people can be authentic in their career journey. The first way is to just never lose sight of your passions. If you love writing, poetry, literature, social justice, art of any kind, maybe you're a math or biology fanatic, anything at all, don't lose sight of those things. Don't forget them. At the end of the day, they fill your cup, right? They feed your soul. And if anyone here is like me, you need that stuff. You just need it. I can always tell when I'm just in need of something like that and I need to pick up a book or go to a museum or something. So while for me personally, my job titles may not scream art, I was able to incorporate art into many of my roles, starting with that senior training specialist role and continuing through my instructional design role and in my current role as a readiness and change specialist. So when I began at Highmark, I learned a lot right off the bat about instructional design because that initial team that I was hired onto was made up of trainers and senior instructional designers. It was just another arm of the team, but I heard about it on a regular basis. And kind of like corporate training, I really didn't even know that instructional design was a job. I had never heard this job title before. So I quickly learned that an instructional designer was kind of like the wizard behind the curtain. They were the people that created training content. They created tutorials and they wrote manuals and they wrote job aids, or they created instructor-led training sessions where an actual trainer or facilitator went through the content with an audience. They were creators. They were writers. I mean, these people were artists. And I realized that that light bulb had finally gone off in my head. This was a role that I wanted. Had I not come into Highmark as a training specialist, I wouldn't know about instructional design. And I knew I wanted to work towards becoming one of those instructional designers so I could begin creating at that level too. It was my passion for poetry, for writing, for learning and teaching that all drove me to becoming an instructional designer. So by remaining true to what I loved, it led me to work that I loved. Now, The caveat is, of course, not every part of being a designer was glamorous, right? There were administrative tasks and many types of challenging software to learn, and a lot of client management and project management that was tough too. Did I love all of that? No, I still don't necessarily love all of those things, but most roles do come with those things in one form or another. I have learned that you will likely never have a job that you love 100% of the time, and that is absolutely okay. I honestly wish someone had told me that so many years ago because I always expected to 1000% love a job, or else, oh my gosh, was I in the wrong job? If I didn't love it 24/7, was I in the wrong place? I learned that just because you don't love every minute aspect of a job, it doesn't mean you're in the wrong job. So if you love the core aspects of a role, then that helps you to know what roles are for you and which ones really aren't. I will never be the data expert, the Excel genius, or any mathematician. Not only are those things not my strengths, but they're just not the things that interest me. And that's okay. Knowing what I love and where my strengths lie are really some of the best guiding factors to figure out how you can weed out roles that aren't really worth trying for you and the other ones that are. So that was really helpful for me to kind of figure out over the years and say, huh, it's okay to not love something 100%, especially if that core is there with all of those passionate elements. So, the second way to be authentic is to remain true to you. Not only was I authentic to my passions, but I was authentic to myself. So, what does that mean? Well, I can be stubborn at times, just a little bit. I can be a little outspoken at other times. Overall, I am not the person to keep quiet or simply go with the flow, especially if I feel that something just isn't right. When I want more from work or life, I say so, I work towards it, and I ask a lot of questions at all times. I probably sound like the adult version of that little toddler who constantly asks all the adults why. I'm sure it drives some people crazy, but for me, understanding the why behind something gives me a better overall understanding of the situation. So, yes, corporate America and the world in general doesn't always love these qualities. However, you can hone these qualities to fit in a variety of settings so they can actually be used for positive outcomes along your career path. And that's what I've done as well. So let's take a look at some tips and tricks for how to hone your authenticity. First, I have learned that it is not what you say, it is often how you say it. I've actually written and trained several courses on business writing and soft skills, including various communication techniques. This first bullet was often the core of those training courses. Choosing your words carefully is an essential skill for your career, and really it is for your life overall. Not all messages are pleasant, and not all conversations are easy. Many, in fact, are really challenging. That doesn't mean they should be ignored, though. Sometimes you must deliver a rough message or talk about a challenging topic. This is how you as an individual can improve, but it's also how society as a whole can improve. How you deliver those tough messages is the vital part. So, for example, you could walk into your boss's office one day and say, I want a promotion. Sure, you could do that. It likely won't get you very far. That's the downside. But what can get you where you want is instead saying, I'd like to develop my skills so I'm ready for my next career move. You've got a much better shot. Trust me, you've got a much better shot of achieving your goal if you stick with option two. So, choosing your words carefully really allows you to say what is needed, no matter how tough it could be, while using clear professional language. The second tip is that your ideas matter. Share them. Once you've mastered number one, and you feel comfortable with how you can deliver messages, number two often comes naturally, which is the good part. When you feel comfortable with how you can share messages, you can then bring your ideas, your thoughts, and your feedback all to the table a little bit more comfortably. So your ideas sometimes go against the majority. Sometimes feedback that you may have to give is more on the constructive side versus fluffy, only positive feedback. That's okay. Organizations and we as a culture in general do not get better when people sit by and don't share their true thoughts. So nothing can really improve without feedback. I will never forget when my instructional design mentor, who is still one of my closest friends, taught me that unless someone knows that something is broken, it can't be fixed. That stuck with me because it's completely true. If you don't speak up when something is broken, something isn't working, it can never even begin to get fixed. So for me, I know that I speak up a lot when my customers or my learners don't get what they need from training or content or change management processes. What's tough is my audience, when they don't get what they need, they often can't do their jobs well for one reason or maybe multiple. And that's never okay with me. So when people get caught in the crossfire like that, when people aren't helped properly, that's usually when I'm speaking up. While it may drive some folks a little bit crazy, I also know that my audience will get what they need, and that matters to me above everything else. So, my last tip for this particular authenticity tips and tricks is really just to ask. Ask for help if you need it, ask questions when they arise. Just ask. You never know what is possible without asking. You never know what knowledge you could gain by asking questions. You never know anything unless you give it a shot and go for it and just ask. I always remember the Wayne Gretzky quote of you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. That's kind of what this is. It's okay to ask because you just never know what the answer could be. So, yes, ask the questions, ask for help, just ask. So, overall, being authentic can often mean being a disruptor. Sometimes it means asking a lot of questions. Sometimes it means disagreeing with the majority. Sometimes it means speaking up for the minority. And sometimes it means championing yourself or sticking up for yourself. All of these things, when done in a professional manner, are absolutely okay. So be that disruptor when things need to change. And chances are that will bring out your authentic self. So we all deserve that workplace where we can be ourselves. And the best way to create that culture is really to live by it and set that example every day. So, as I was going through my career and as I was an instructional designer, I was happy with it, but I knew that I wanted to continue growing in that space and in some other spaces as well. So I loved learning and development overall. I figured out that a master's in training and adult learning sounded like a logical next step. So I was actually in an adult learning and training program here at Point Park a few years ago. I completed 4 classes out of 10 total. And I had that nagging feeling again, just like when I was at the high school, it wasn't for me. The program itself has wonderful content. I still use one of the books that I got from that program. I still use it in my job today. And I loved working with some of my old professors, right? It was great to see some familiar faces again. It just wasn't what I wanted. In my time as a designer, though, I had come to love soft skills and the training that went along with it. So it included things like communication, active listening, empathy, critical thinking, and asking the right questions, plus a lot of coaching and mentoring. I loved working with people and enhancing their skills and helping them to bring their best selves to work. I will never forget a friend of mine one day, way back when I was in that training and adult learning program, said to me, he said, "Are you really happy? Is it really what you want to be doing?" And he said, "If the answer is no, it's time to reevaluate." And he was right. With that in mind, I quit that adult learning and training program and I went back on the hunt for a master's that would help me more on the soft skills path of working with and understanding people. After about a 6-month hiatus from grad school, I found exactly what I wanted. I enrolled in a Master of Science program in psychology at Capella, and I haven't looked back since. I officially had found my second love, only second to English and the arts, of course, and that was psychology. So I completed that master's in late 2019, and it was truly not the master's I ever thought I'd get, but it was absolutely the one I needed for so many reasons. So for Disturbing the Universe Part 3, embrace those changes and failures. I know it is not easy. Believe me, I still struggle with this myself because it won't be pleasant. In fact, there are probably times when it'll be downright yucky, and that's okay. The more I personally tried to fight changes or tried to prevent failures, the less I learned and grew, not just professionally, but personally. Believe me, when I left that master's program, I felt like a failure, even though I left for valid reasons. It wasn't even the first time I had changed majors. When I actually started at Point Park way back in 2006, I entered into the university as a journalism major. In high school, people always told me that journalism was right for me because I was a good writer. And I listened to them. And I found out pretty quickly that while there was some awesome stuff in the journalism world, it wasn't my world. I was sitting in a literature class at Point Park with one of my favorite teachers at the time, and we were working on a poetry unit. It was the first poetry unit I had worked on since I got out of high school. It was then that I knew poetry and English were still where my heart was, and that teacher encouraged me to follow that feeling. So, in the middle of fall semester during my sophomore year in my bachelor's, I bagged journalism and I shifted to secondary English education. While my teacher added the encouragement that I needed, I also realized I had to start trusting my own instincts a little bit more. So, ideas from those around you and the feedback from people who know you are essential. They can really help you when you're trying to make decisions and you're in a challenging situation. But don't forget to also trust yourself and your instincts because you can feel when something is right and you can feel when a change is needed. So, quitting, right? Quitting a major, quitting a program really has such a negative connotation to it. And I realized long after I left that first grad program that it wasn't a negative thing to leave behind what I didn't want. Instead, I was taking a road that was a little less traveled, and taking it made all the difference. So, yes, for any Robert Frost fans out there, I hope you are also smiling now too, because I am a big Robert Frost fan. So, here we are today with Robert Frost as well. And see, who says poetry can't fit into all of our worlds? I told you that it could. But this shift, this decision to take a different road, not only changed my career, but it helped to change my life overall. It allowed me to travel down a psychology road, which is still something I actually read about and study on my own because I love it so much. It helped me to gain a better understanding of myself. I dug deeper into my triggers and my anxiety, and I learned about my behaviors and my emotions. So it helped me then to also understand my motivations, my fears, and just more about me as a person. It also led me to completing certifications in things like emotional intelligence, and I'm currently working on a human centered design certification through Highmark because those topics are just essential for creating a better work environment and a better personal environment. So suddenly I knew me better, and that let me know others better simply because I changed grad school courses. So, learning about psychology also helped me to shift from an instructional designer to a readiness and change specialist, which is now my current role at Highmark. So, this role is essentially an HR role for change management, which is the group of people that helps an organization navigate through changes. Sometimes they're big changes, sometimes they're smaller, but organizational changes overall, we help people to kind of navigate those tough waters. At the heart of these organizational changes are humans. So, understanding how humans react to change, what it takes to change behaviors, how motivation plays a huge role in behavior change, and having the ability to communicate messages clearly, plus actually train people when needed, are all still essential parts of my job. So, I've taken my initial love for poetry and the arts and transformed it into working with people, creating content and messaging that resonates with people, and eventually learning more about how our brains work throughout all of these processes. So, what felt like a failure actually was a door opening to somewhere I'd never thought I'd be, but now I love it. Had I not been willing to embrace those changes, and believe me, there were many days when I went kicking and screaming into those changes instead of embracing them. But had I not embraced them overall, I don't know what career path I'd be on now. There is no perfect job. There are no fully right or wrong options. There are simply the things you do or the things you don't do. And each of those can help you learn about yourself while also enhancing your skills. So change paths, let yourself fail. Those things are okay, they are normal, and they can be the building blocks to more knowledge and more opportunities. So before we begin wrapping up this portion of today, let's do a quick recap. So as you start applying for jobs, remember to take those chances whenever you come across roles that you want. Every application you never submit is always a no. However, some of the applications you submit will become a yes. So next, remember to be authentic to yourself and to your passions. Your personality, your skills, your traits, they are all things that are unique to you. So honing them for a professional world can help you to build the career path that best suits you. And lastly, don't forget to embrace those changes and those failures. They will happen. Probably a good amount of them will happen, and you will find knowledge and growth in many, if not every single one of them. Now, I know this one is tough. It is possibly the toughest one out of the three, because when you're in that moment, it's very hard to embrace a failure or a really scary change. It can actually feel completely impossible. You're not alone in those feelings. Believe me, just because I've worked my way down this career path doesn't mean I still don't fear both of these things. I'm still nervous when I fail. I'm still afraid of changes. I just am. And I probably always will be to an extent. But I let myself feel that fear and that discomfort. I let those yucky emotions come in, and then I come out on the other side of them. So, as we began today's session, I asked everyone to keep one question in mind. That question was, do I dare disturb the universe? When I first graduated from Point Park, I really had no idea what my career would look like. While I had a degree with a seemingly obvious career path, I just never felt that anything was obvious about it. I had no idea where my career would lead then. I still don't know where it could lead next. Working with high school kids as a substitute teacher, working in several wait staff roles, getting into a data entry role, making the jump to Highmark as a training specialist, and then working my way up to a designer and now a readiness and change specialist were all stepping stones to where I am today. It seems like a crazy career path. As I was putting this presentation together, I realized that it did. It seemed like a crazy path. But the reality is, I let my foundations of writing, of poetry, and of the arts guide my way through that whole path. I built a career not solely on my degrees, but on what my degrees taught me. They taught me how to critically think, how to ask questions, how to dig just a little bit deeper into everything, how to get creative when finding solutions, and how words are often the most powerful tool in your tool belt. So once I obtained my master's, I also built upon that foundation next. Understanding humans, their behaviors, their motivations and feelings are all at the core of just about everything. So as I mentioned earlier, organizations of all kinds would be nothing without the people behind closed doors, the people completing that work. Coupling those two things together, my knowledge and skills gained through the arts and psychology, I was able to build this path. Again, I'm not really sure what the next steps look like just yet. I don't think there is any one job that encompasses everything that I love, but I know that there are many jobs that are worth a shot. So as I continue my career path, I constantly ask myself, do I dare disturb the universe? When I feel unsure of myself or my next steps, or maybe both, this question guides me. Yeah, I do dare. I have to, because that is how I've gotten to where I am. And I know it's how I'll continue forward when the next adventure arises. So my question to you is, how about you? Do you dare to disturb the universe too? So thank you all so much for your time today. If you have any questions at all, we can take a look at them now if anything has come through. And Kenny, I will turn this back over to you.
Jamie, all I have to say is, wow. I really loved that presentation. It kind of spoke to me personally. And to answer the question of your presentation, I'm absolutely ready to disturb the universe in any chance that I can personally do and professionally do. You brought up some great points, especially that first one, taking a chance, because it all starts with taking a chance, right? You have to apply to those jobs. You have to try and score those interviews, do something that you haven't done before. I remember one of my interviews, I was asked to come up with some sort of event for the Career Center. And I didn't know what to choose from. And I stepped out of my comfort zone a little bit, and I was really excited. I eventually landed this job. But in creating that event, I stepped out of my comfort zone, and I'm so glad I did. I took that chance. And you also mentioned be authentic, right? I think that goes further than professionally. I think it really speaks to people personally as well. Try to be the authentic self, the most authentic version of you. That's my saying to myself. And I hope the attendees have gained that from this presentation. And then that final one, embrace the changes and failures, right? Yeah, it's scared. It's scary to fail. I think that's what fear comes from, is failure. But if we embrace that, then I feel like you can go anywhere in life. But I do want to thank you so much for that amazing presentation. We do have a comment. It wasn't necessarily a question, but it was a comment from Sarah in the Q&A portion. She said, these authenticity career tips and tricks echo a lot of what we hope everyone will remember during writing workshops. So I don't know if you want to respond to that or anything, but thank you again for that amazing presentation. I hope it resonated with a lot of people who are here today with us.
You are welcome. And Sarah, thank you for echoing that. Yes, I am hoping the same as well, that everyone will recall some of those tips and tricks and whatnot. And yeah, that's an awesome connection, especially too. So thank you. And I see there was another little comment from Jess. Thank you, Jess, for the comment and compliment. I appreciate that.
Well, again, thank you, Jamie. Feel free, we're going to jump into the panel portion, but feel free if you want to answer any of the questions that I asked the panelists, feel free to answer.
Awesome. Thank
if you would like. So we're going to now transfer and transition into the career panel. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So as I mentioned before, we are keeping it in the Point Park family. Everyone who is attending today is either a Point Park alum or a current Point Park student. So as I mentioned earlier, you'll be hearing from Lauren Hunter, who is a Point Park senior and a creative writing major. Kaitlyn Regulbuto, who is a Point Park alumni as well, special education teacher, grades 9 through 12 at the Covenant House in Detroit, Michigan. And Nicole Chynoweth, Point Park alumni, content manager in the enrollment marketing department at Point Park University. So I'm really glad that each of you could be here today. So let's start off with, introductions. Could each of you tell us a little bit about yourself, how your educational background prepared you for your current career or the career that you would like to go into? So let's begin with Lauren, and then we'll transition to Kaitlyn, and then we'll end with Nicole.
Thank you, Kenny. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren. Like Kenny said, I'm a graduating senior here at Point Park. I'm in the creative writing program. So I actually used to be a dance major, and I changed career paths, major paths after my sophomore year. I've always been a very avid reader. I used to write a lot therapeutically, and then after talking to some of my professors, was able to transfer that into a professional career thanks to the creative writing program. And the educational background that this program has given me definitely a leg up and an advantage in my experience pursuing professional opportunities. And having a writing background in general has made me very valuable to the companies that I intern for, whether they are artistic editorial companies or not. I would really like to go into editing and publishing. That's really the career that I'm hoping to get into. And then the workshops, like Jamie had mentioned, have really prepared me a lot for that professional experience. And I found that no matter what class or major I'm taking within the department, there's always some sort of workshop or peer workshop. And I would encourage everyone to take advantage of that because it is a really great part of this department.
Yeah, I guess it's my turn. I also changed my major 3 times in undergrad, much to my parents' dismay. I started as an elementary ed major. I switched over to secondary ed English in the beginning of my sophomore year. And by the end, I transitioned completely into the English department at Point Park. So I left Point Park with a degree in literary arts and 2 minors in education and gender studies. And then obviously I ended up teaching. But a lot of the internships I did in undergrad kind of prepped me for teaching, as I work in alternative ed in a nonprofit charter school. So it's a little more non-traditional than your typical school. And the English department also kind of prepared me for that. I do work, even though I teach special ed, I do a lot of the English support for our resource room. So I do a lot of supplementary stuff for our high school kids, kind of introducing new literature, more contemporary YA into our curriculum currently. And a lot of those pieces were introduced to me by our own literary arts department.
Everyone, thank you so much for having me here today, Kenny. I really appreciate the opportunity. My name's Nicole. I chose Point Park University after attending high school journalism camp. I double majored in journalism and multimedia and graduated in 2013. I completed a pretty wide variety of internships, and I really appreciated that all of my Point Park professors encouraged students to try a little bit of everything so that we could fully explore our career possibilities, and all of those diverse experiences would later make me a more attractive job candidate. So I had a really great experience at the university. My education prepared me to not only work in a newsroom, but I also came away with a lot of strong storytelling skills just in general that I've been able to apply to every single job I've had. I wrote for several newspapers before I transitioned to a marketing and PR role at Carnegie Science Center in 2017. And I enjoyed my job there. If you've ever been there, you know it's one of the coolest places in Pittsburgh. But when the content manager role that I'm in now became available, I couldn't say no. I wanted the job more than everyone else because everything that I've achieved in life is because of the education I got at Point Park. So for me to be able to write feature stories about the school, the degree programs, students, faculty, and alumni is tremendously fulfilling for me. And I love what I do.
Thank you all for those wonderful introductions. So Lauren, I understand that you're a current Point Park student and you're actually a senior. You're ready to graduate in April, majoring in creative writing. So tell us a bit about what kind of inspired this career choice and how you plan to utilize creative writing in the future.
Yeah. So like I mentioned before, what originally brought me to Point Park was a dance major. Point Park is very well known for their performance school. And then I was a ballet dancer for 18 years. And then I just sort of realized that it wasn't for me anymore, especially to pursue professionally. And in my sophomore year, I had taken a creative writing class in the department and just sort of immediately fell in love with it. It was a door that opened for me that I didn't anticipate. Like I said before, I've always been an avid reader. I always enjoyed writing, but it was a very private thing for me. And so making it professional wasn't something that I ever thought about. But after making that transition into a creative writing major has opened countless doors for me professionally and within the academic setting. And I think that the Literary Arts and Social Justice Department at Point Park specifically does a really great job at preparing its students for any type of professional writing, whether that's storytelling, journalism. What I do now, I write for a cybersecurity company, which is so out of pocket. And I just think that this department teaches people how to cultivate writing in multiple fields and genres, which is a very unique experience, I think.
So kind of relating it back to Jamie's presentation, it sounds like you did want to disturb the universe. It sounds like you wanted to take that chance. And it sounds like it was a great opportunity for you and you're really enjoying it.
Yeah, I did for sure. And it was a path that even 4 years ago, I never anticipated I would have taken, but now that I have, it's been really amazing.
That's amazing to hear. I love hearing success stories that students, I know it can be scary to change majors. I did it in undergrad and I'm so happy to hear success stories of students who have found their calling and they took that chance. So I'm really excited to see what the future has in store for you. Kaitlyn, as a special education teacher at the Covenant House in Detroit, I'm interested in hearing how you kind of got into this career field, because you mentioned earlier it was out of the norm. It's kind of different than what you majored in. So I'm kind of interested to hear how you got into that.
Yeah, so I obviously had some educational experience in my back pocket from originally majoring in education, but I didn't see myself doing it long term, which is why I switched to the English department in the first place. But I ended up working for a lot of nonprofits or interning at a lot of nonprofits that focused on education to, again, a traditional populations in a traditional routes. So I was at the Carnegie Science Center for a little bit doing STEM education. I did data analysis for the Homeless Children Education Fund. And I worked at a great nonprofit in the North Side called the Pittsburgh Project for almost 2 years. And I worked with ages kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade while I was there. So a lot of my internships and jobs while at Point Park really helped lend my resume that proved I was capable of working in non-traditional education settings. But also I just am a strong editor, which working in special ed is also a lot of paperwork. You're prepping students to have accommodations in gen ed classrooms, making sure that people are giving them supports. And the literary arts department kind of prepared me for that too. I learned a lot about advocacy while in my time at Point Park. And, one of the really cool parts of my job is getting to teach my 16 to 26-year-olds how to advocate in real world settings when you don't have a support teacher with you all the time, and how do you tell people what you need and when you need it in ways that are socially appropriate. So yeah, a lot of my experiences at Point Park and with the help of Point Park faculty kind of prepped me for this.
That is awesome. Nicole, as the current content manager in the enrollment marketing department here at Point Park, how did your education and extracurricular involvement prepare you for this experience?
Sure. In terms of my education, my journalism professors taught me to just write well. For starters, they challenged me to write outside of my comfort zone, to be open and accepting of criticism, and to also consider alternative modes of storytelling. But it's really important to me that I recognize the impact that my electives and my general education courses had on me, especially because I understand this is for the literary arts department. And I just want to kind of share some of the ways that the courses outside of my journalism degree helped me. So for starters, Edmina's history courses piqued my interest in reading more about world events that interest me, from the history of the 1960s to the women's movement, the civil rights movement, World War II. And reading is such a big part of developing great writing skills and communication skills especially. And I'm so glad I took his courses, because they not only fed my soul, but they also translated to growth in my reading comprehension. Sarah's Sylvia Plath class transformed the way I read poetry entirely, and it also transformed my approach to communicating creatively and communicating with intention. And the growth that I achieved in that class from a critical thinking perspective was just immeasurable. I loved it. And Kim Bell's Spanish class taught me the importance of understanding current events outside of my own backyard and considering the global implications that those have. And that really helped me as a journalist when I started working in a newsroom. And I want to share all of these experiences to emphasize how much those courses that weren't directly related to my major helped me in my professional development. And I encourage students that if you're studying something, if you're in a course that maybe doesn't on its face look like it's directly related to what you ultimately want to do in your career, you should still really take it seriously, because the rewards are vast and great. They will transform your career more than you can imagine. In terms of extracurricular involvement, my apprenticeship and work study position were both valuable in helping me build my portfolio and my confidence. For my apprenticeship, I wrote and designed marketing materials, I conducted student surveys, and also took photos for the Student Center. And then for my work study position, I was Heather Fiedler's work study, and I was like her digital media assistant. So I helped with website edits. I wrote web feature stories. I proofread the course catalog every semester. And I did a wide variety of hands-on tasks. And in both roles, for lack of a better phrase, I got to do real stuff that mattered. So I encourage students listening today, seek out as many experiential learning opportunities as you can. Not only do they play well on a resume when you're interviewing with employers, but they'll help you define your career interests and build your character, and also just increase your confidence as a professional when you're entering the workforce.
Thank you, Nicole. That's some very valuable information that you shared with us today. And I'm kind of interested, and I'm sure our attendees are interested as well to know, you guys kind of touched upon the skills that you've gained in your educational backgrounds of what you've learned, but I'm sure it might help our attendees to know, how did you continue to enhance those skills during college or post-graduation? So let's start with Lauren, and then we'll go to Kaitlyn, and we'll transition back to Nicole.
I have gotten a lot of great skills from the literary arts department, with writing in general, like I said, in multiple fields and genres, whether that's creatively in storytelling or whether that's research-based or analytically. I've been able to carry that into all of the professional endeavors and internships that I have had. Knowing how to edit and help my peers in workshop get their drafts to a place where they want them to be is one of the biggest skills I've been able to carry throughout my professional experience thus far, especially being able to help my coworkers edit. And I think especially sometimes as an intern, people don't want to speak up and say, oh, I noticed this, because this is someone that's been working in the company for years and years, and you're just coming in. But one thing that I have found is when I actually speak up and notice a grammatic error or a way that something could be phrased better, they appreciate that feedback. And so I think that the department as a whole does a great job at making the classes a conversation versus a teacher just speaking at you, which I think is a very valuable thing to take, because in the professional world, it's important to, like Jamie said, ask questions and to have conversations with the people that you're working with. So that is one of the biggest things that I have learned from the department this far.
Yeah, I would say on a more technical side, definitely editing paperwork. It's good that I feel confident in being my own second set of eyes, although it's always good to have, another set check it out. In under-resourced schools, that's not always possible. So feeling confident in my own editing abilities to go back in my own paperwork and triple check and make sure that I'm setting students up for success. On a more critical side, I think working with the student body I do, students have been severely underserved in previous schools. Typically, I have 20-year-olds that are on kindergarten reading levels and writing levels. And so helping them become confident in their reading and writing is so important. And they make progress quickly when they gain that confidence. So finding books they like, having discussions about how we write, how we rephrase, how we speak can translate in our writing, has become a really important skill for me to be able to share with my students. Yeah, so.
Mine is kind of similar to Lauren's and Kaitlyn's. The one that stands out for me the most is definitely self-editing, which is really important for professional writers, as you all have stated. When you can find the strength to cut a quote that 10 minutes ago was vital to the structural integrity of your story, that's huge. And it'll make life a lot easier whenever you're turning in your work to an editor too. As you can probably guess, I'm usually pretty long-winded. And when I first started as a reporter, I could take a 15-minute municipal authority meeting and turn it into a 600-word epic, then turn it into my scary editor who would turn that into 300 words. But thinking back to the lessons I learned in my journalism classes and my English classes, I was able to focus on who I was writing for and remove the emotion from admitting that a story isn't the best that it can be just yet.
And then Jamie, I know you want to chime in here a little bit.
Yeah, I can definitely chime in on this one. So, also, too, never underestimate the power of working on something on your own. So, even if it's not a work assignment or something directly related to your career or even a school assignment, grab the journal, write journal entries. Work on writing prompts. You know, there are websites that provide tons and tons of writing prompts where you can work on creative writing or essays or just a variety of different things. So never underestimate honing those skills in private, because while getting things to someone else and doing something maybe for a specific career task or a school task is a completely, useful and necessary thing to hone the skills, don't forget that doing it on your own, and just the more you practice and the more you write and learn your voice and learn about editing on your end, just like I know Kate was saying and Nicole with some of the self editing, and I think even Lauren as well, just never underestimate that, because it does help you. Practice is practice, whether you're doing it in front of someone or you're doing it behind closed doors. So always remember those tools that are out there too that can really help.
I completely agree. Even if it's just separately, but practice. You mentioned it. Practice makes perfect. And I love how you keep mentioning honing your skills, because I think that's important in any aspect of life, personal or professional. To be better in our profession, to be better humans in general, we have to keep enhancing our skills, honing on our skills. So thank you for mentioning that. I kind of want to transition into specific career experiences that our panelists have endured and also possible internships. So another question for you, Nicole. You have a lot of experience when it comes to reporting, journalism, social media, and freelance writing. So can you talk to us about these career experiences and what was the inspiration at the root of it all?
Sure. I knew I wanted to be a writer in the 4th grade, and by the 5th grade, I knew I wanted to be a reporter for Rolling Stone. Lofty goal. I got very lucky with my first job. Professor Andy Conti called me 2 days before graduation to offer me a paid internship at the Greensburg Tribune Review. I was hired full-time a month into it, and I wrote feature stories, breaking news, obits. I covered government meetings, and basically anything happening in the Ligonier Valley coverage area, which was home to one of the Tribune Review's weeklies, the Ligonier Echo. Unfortunately, the company sold its weeklies around 2015, and I didn't know if I would have a job. So I applied to every reporter opening in Pennsylvania at the time, all 2 of them. And I took a web editor and breaking news job at the Hanover Evening Sun, where social media became one of my main responsibilities. I had taken a social media course during my undergrad, and I worked in that space a bit in some of my internships, but this was my first crack at doing it for real. And my editor there, she left to go to the Central Penn Business Journal in Harrisburg and poached me to follow her there for a web editor job. And at that job, I pretty much was just doing social media, but also managing the website and doing some reporting. I loved my job there, but I missed Pittsburgh. And a mentor of mine, a fellow Point Park alum, Jane Houston, who lives in Hershey, she was kind enough to meet with me for coffee and talk to me about what I liked doing so that I could sort of narrow down what kind of job search I was embarking on to move back to Pittsburgh. And we talked a lot about what did I like writing about. And the 2 things I kept coming back to were writing about women in leadership and writing about STEM. So I started applying to jobs that sort of aligned with those aspects of my career, and Carnegie Science Center was a great fit. I was really nervous about my skills translating, but I found that promoting something I cared about and supporting a mission that I cared about, it made the learning curve a lot easier. Now I cannot stress, I'm sorry if this is maybe going over your 3 minutes that you were asking for, Kenny, but we'll get there. This all matters. It all connects. So this next chapter in my career is, I really want to share it with all of you students today, because it just goes to show you got to trust the process and you have to trust yourself. So in December 2019, I applied for a social media manager job here at Point Park. I got through to the final round of interviews. I Beyonce'd my final presentation. I left everything on the floor. I wanted that job more than anybody else. I didn't get it. I was completely devastated. I wanted so badly to work for my alma mater and apply all of the social media skills that I had gained over the last few years. But then the pandemic happened, and I ended up creating my best contribution during my career at the Science Center, which was our Read, Watch, Do campaign during the pandemic. Every day we curated something to read, something to watch, and something to do for families that followed us on social media. And by far, it was the greatest thing I did when I was working for the organization. And I'm so thankful for that experience. It was awesome. Then that summer, the content manager role that I'm in now became available. And the timing could not have been more perfect because I was completely burnt out on social media and desperate for a break. And I wanted to get back to writing more. And now I got it. I love the job, and it challenges me and brings me joy. And I'm using my skills for good, which is super important to me. So all of that is just to say your path will not be linear. You will not always get the job that you think you deserve, but if you work hard, trust yourself, and keep an open mind, you will amass experiences that will lead you to the right opportunities for the right time.
I love that. I love everything you mentioned. I love the ending. And I think it was a great takeaway for the attendees here listening. So hopefully they took a great message from that, because I'm happy you're here at Point Park. I know we collaborated on some things and some events and articles, and I couldn't express how much I enjoy you being here and your contribution to Point Park.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Kaitlyn, as someone working with transient populations in Detroit, I'm interested to hear how this experience has impacted you, and what kind of advice do you have for attendees who kind of want to learn more and get involved in their community?
Yeah, so the majority of my students are facing homelessness, formerly or currently incarcerated, foster care kids, so really unique populations, and I have kind of gotten thrown in headfirst with education as a whole, but especially working with a unique population like I do. And to be honest, the experience has changed me. I've seen a lot of grief, a lot of sadness, but I've also seen a lot of joy. So I would say probably like the impact this has had on me is just, I am always learning, and I struggled when I first left Point Park, not being an undergrad anymore, not really working with my true passion, which is reading. And it was a hard adjustment, but I have kind of adapted and learned that I am just currently learning in a different way. I would say my advice is you have to be empathetic. I have students who have really hard days, and that those hard days sometimes come out on us. And being empathetic has made me realize that it's not a me problem. It's not a them problem. It is that we all have hard days. And so I would say you have to be willing to, change your mind, learn, and grow. I've had a lot of self-growth since being in my program. I'm constantly reading, being challenged in ideas and perspectives I previously had. So yeah, I would say never be afraid to keep learning, and don't be afraid for this next transition, because it's hard, but you will adapt, and you will learn to adapt in ways that you didn't think you could.
Circling back to Jamie's presentation, taking that chance, right? But also being that authentic, that you're not authentic, using empathy, right? You mentioned empathy, which was also mentioned in Jamie's presentation. And I think it's kind of crazy to think about how this whole event is pretty much, the answers are unscripted, and it all relates to each other. And I think that's just amazing. I hope our attendees can realize that.